So in 2000, in the country of Slovakia, a woman was going to the hospital. And in the Washington Press, it was reported that this was her second-born child. While in the final stages of labor, this woman was said to have to be signed a consent. And this consent basically said that it was sterilization. Of course, she was under pressure, in pain, and completely confused. But of course, she was also given birth, so she went ahead and signed this. She was, quote, told that either the baby or her would die if she didn't sign this form. Of course, when she woke up, she realized what she had done and that she had basically given up a big part of her future. The Romani have a rich history and culture and have long been persecuted by people who do not understand it. But we believe that by learning more about these ancient peoples, you can begin to combat the ignorance and discrimination they have faced. So to give you a little bit background about these people, here's Elliot.
Thank you, Andy. Because of the history of persecution that the Romani people have faced, they have had a long history of forced migrations. The history of the Romani people is not well recorded because they have no writing system, but it's guessed through genetic and linguistic evidence that they've come from India. By the end of the 12th century, they migrated into the Balkan area near Byzantium. According to an article by Patrick J. Keeger entitled A History of the Romani People for National Geographic, the Romani people were welcomed in the Balkan areas for the first 200 centuries, and they were seen as valued members of society who could work with metals. It's guessed that in India the Romani people came from the lowest classes. The people again settled in Byzantium, and then they started to break off into distinct subgroups of Romani and formed their own distinct cultures. The three most populous are the Roma. The terms Roma and Romani are largely interchangeable because the Romani make up a big percentage and they represent the Romani people well. The Sinti and the Roma people live around the Mediterranean Sea, but they've also spread to all four corners of Europe and have even crossed the Atlantic Ocean into North America. The Sinti people have come into Germany and near the 15th century, which was quite a late migration out of the Balkans in comparison to the other groups. And the Iberian Kale people in Spain and Portugal and parts of France make up 2% of the Spanish population, a significant minority. The Romani people have a significant minority in almost every country in Europe. Because of the history of forced migration, the Romani people have developed their own cultures, and Adrian will tell you more about the culture of the Romani peoples.
Thank you, Elliot. Yes, let me take a quick glimpse into the Romani culture. As explained in the cultural profile powered by Esparce, which is an Irish humanitarian group, many of the cultural practices of the Romani stem from the religious beliefs. For instance, the practice of ritualistic cleansing, which is a very key part of the culture, stem from ancient Hindu customs, which they first practiced in the days of India. Many Romanis have strict rules concerning what is clean, dirty, and spiritually polluted. One can be found polluted by sexual behaviors or violations of set rules and guidelines for food preparation, appearance, and for interacting with the Gaja or outsiders who are commonly known as spiritually contaminated for not following the Romani ways. A study in Myths and Facts about Roma by Warren Lee. With this knowledge, if a member of the clan is found to be spiritually polluted, a sentence of expulsion from the family can be implemented. And not only can be getting weak acceptance into the family, is going through a ritual called a quiz, which is a spiritual cleansing ritual performed by elders of the family. introduced to another key part of the culture is how important the family is. I think it's so important that throughout their entire lives, they live with their extended families, move from place to place with them. And the structures to that comparable to pre-contemporary American families, which are primarily male-dominant, making all the decision makers, while the women have more subordinate role. As seen through these pictures how close-knit different generations of the family are, and notice how modest the dress is following the purity customs. And with this diverse culture and history actually led, sadly, to the persecution, and Jackson will go into detail about how they were discriminated against through the years.
So it's not really possible to talk about discrimination against the Romani in Europe without talking about their treatment under the Nazis. This is a picture of some Romani prisoners in a concentration camp. You see, under the Nazi regime, Romani were mostly classified as asocial mongrels. Many were forcibly sterilized by the Nazis and put into concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And as many as 100,000 were likely murdered by the Nazis. But these ideas aren't just limited to Nazi Germany. Even as late as 1994, 2/3 of Germans polled said that they would feel uncomfortable living with Romani in their neighborhood. And as you can see here, the Germans and those ideas, those levels of discomfort with Romani are far from unique to Germany. In fact, in an Amnesty International briefing released in 2012 revealed that 20% of Romani reported having been the victims of personal hate crimes against them during the past 12 months alone. And of course, you've already heard about the forced sterilization imposed on hundreds of women by state-run hospitals in Slovakia. Now, an article in the International released in 2012 also reveals that the Romani aren't just among the most discriminated against minorities in Europe, but they're also among the poorest. In Moldova, for example, the poverty rate of Romani is as high as 59%. 15% are illiterate, 1/3 have received fewer than 6 years of formal education, and employment rate is only at about 38%. But now that you know more about the history and culture and the long history of persecution that the Romani have faced, what can you, so far from the places that these problems are felt the most severely, possibly do about them? Well, you've already started to do one really important thing, and that's learning about who these people are and not relying on old stereotypes, calling them gypsies or fortune tellers. But we've barely been able to scratch the surface, so I beg you to continue to learn about it in your own time and just share what you learn with your friends, because you know that the surest inoculation against hatred is education.